This week, we're going to be talking about some of the upcoming changes to Warhammer 40k 10th edition. We also have a collaboration between Minecraft and Dungeons & Dragons that has me super hyped, and we have some board games to talk about. All this and more in this week's Hobby News. I'm Angela, you're watching Hobby Night. Now let's get to it. There are lots of big changes coming to Warhammer 10th edition, and I wanted to talk about a couple of them today. The first one is the fact that all of the 9th edition codexes are officially going to be obsolete when 10th edition comes out. Now, this isn't exactly a surprise, but I do hope that this is the last time that we have to deal with this from Games Workshop, because it is a complaint that I have had, and I think a lot of the community has had, when it comes to Games Workshop and them producing rules, selling them, and then making them completely invalid within roughly 6 months of them coming out. That exact.
More like 3.
I agree. Well, yeah, 3 exactly, because like the World Eaters just got their codex, and it's basically going to be invalid in June-ish, which doesn't give them a lot of time to play with it. And I hate seeing this happen, but as I said, hopefully with 10th edition and some of the changes that are happening, this is going to be the last time. Now let's actually talk about some of these changes, because when it comes to mustering your army, there are some big things happening that are a little bit different from before, and there are also some things that are staying the same. So the first part of mustering your army is picking your battle size. There are going to be 3 to choose from, a 1,000 point, 2,000 point, or 3,000 point option, and Games Workshop does call out that their core rules are optimally designed for these larger play scales. So if you're wanting to do a 500 point game, you absolutely can in casual, but you may not see it in tournaments, and it's not really designed for that. But I do think that's what their combat patrols are going to be for, and I look forward to finding out more information about that. Once you have picked your battle size, the next step is to pick your army faction, and this is pretty straightforward and exactly as you remember it. Pick Space Marines, Eldar, Tyranids, Orcs, whatever you prefer. Now, here's where we start to get into the changes, and I'm not sure how I feel about them. The next step would have normally been to pick your sub-faction, or create your own sub-faction and run that. But that is no longer the case. What you do now is you're going to select a set of detachment rules, and these detachment rules are going to determine the rules for your army. It's going to include stuff like special abilities, stratagems, enhancements, and unit restrictions, just like the sub-factions did previously, except that they're not going to be tied to a specific color scheme anymore. And this is where things start to get a little bit weird for me, because on one hand, I see what Games Workshop is trying to do. They want to make it so that if you really, really like the Blood Angel color scheme and you've painted your army as Blood Angels, but you have found that you actually prefer the playstyle of Imperial Fists, or maybe even the Ultramarines, because they use an example of Ultramarines in the article, well, then you can paint them still as Blood Angels, but run the detachment that makes them function like Ultramarines. And I don't inherently dislike that. I like the flexibility of being able to paint your army however you want and have there be legitimate rules saying that that is okay, because that is a conflict I think a lot of hobbyists get into with each other of your army doesn't match the rules that you're using. So they've kind of eliminated that factor. However, this kind of goes in the face of everything that they've done up until this point, and that's why it feels so weird to me, and I don't know if I actually like it. I would love to know what your thoughts are on the new detachments versus picking a sub-faction is, because they feel similar, but obviously dissimilar, and it's thrown me into a weird place. But once you've gone through this crisis and you've picked your detachment, the next step is picking your units, and this seems pretty straightforward as well. You need at least 1 character. You can have a max of 1 of each epic hero type, so you can't spam named characters or anything like that, or your special guys. You can have up to 3 of the same datasheet, unless that datasheet includes the keywords, either battle line or dedicated transport, in which case you can have 6 of them, and that's pretty much how you pick your units. After that, it's a matter of choosing one of your characters to be your warlord. They get the warlord trait, and I assume you'll get other things for them later, but they haven't gone into detail on that. And that is how you now muster your army. The biggest change, as I mentioned, is picking a detachment rather than a sub-faction, and like I said, I'm in a weird place with this, but I'd love to know your thoughts below. Now, there is one other thing that I'd like to talk about when it comes to the new edition of Warhammer 40k, and that is the stat lines for the units, so let's talk about that next. we got to take a look at an Intercessor's new stat line, and there are some changes as well as some things that have stayed the same. Let's talk first about some of the things that have stayed the same, because movement, toughness, the saving throw, and wounds all look identical and there haven't really been any changes. Where there have been some changes is to how leadership is behaving, and we have a new leadership stat line. On the Intercessor, you might notice a 6+, and that is because now you're going to roll 2d6 and you want to score higher numbers to be successful, which I think I like this change. This feels like a little bit of a reverse from previously, and I think this is more similar to how it's done in Age of Sigmar, which I am okay with, and I'm going to be curious to see how much of a factor morale and leadership is going to end up playing in 10th edition 40k. Now, one of the other big changes that you might be noticing is that OC stat line. Well, OC stands for Objective Control, and this is a new stat to help clarify who's actually in control of objectives. Now, every unit is going to have an OC score, and basically how to determine who's actually in charge of an objective is you'll count up all of the relevant models that are within range of that objective. You'll tally up to see who has the most OC points, and whoever has the higher number is currently in control of the objective. That, I think, is brilliant. I actually think it streamlines things and it'll make things a little bit less questionable going forward, which hopefully speeds up the game. Now, you might also be noticing that weapon skill, the ballistic skills, strength, and attack all are not on the unit's stat line, and that's because they've been moved to the weapon profile, which I think is an interesting choice. Now, each weapon is going to have its own profile, but they are going to be unique to each unit. So if a Space Marine is using a chainsword versus a Chaos Cultist using a chainsword, that chainsword that the Space Marine has supposedly will be more strong. It'll be able to just be a better chainsword, honestly. And this is an interesting change, and I'm going to be very curious everybody's opinion on it, because I think overall it's good. You're going to end up having special abilities and all that kind of thing specifically on the weapon's profile rather than it being on the unit's profile, which hopefully will make things a bit more streamlined, making you flip through less pages, etc. And that really seems like that's Games Workshop's objective here. So I think overall I'm okay with these changes. Let me know what your thoughts are down below, especially about the whole thing with the sub-factions not really being a thing. I do want to know how Games Workshop is going to address that, because I just don't know if it's going to be something fans are super into.
Finest warriors, those who give themselves to me. Like clay I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war, forge them.
I'm not going to lie. As somebody who both loves Warhammer 40k and also is into working out, I kind of want the fitness Warhammer. I wish so desperately that this was a real product, even if they just did like a super limited run of it, but this was a brilliant April Fool's video. I really, really liked it. I think I want to do squats with it. I want to do the devastating charge. I want to be able to rev my motorcycle like a White Scar for the con. It just would be amazing. Like, genuinely, this ad made me laugh so hard. It also really amused me because I actually follow a number of Instagram profiles that are all about Warhammer 40k and also being fit. And I was just sitting there going, you know, I wonder if Fit Hammers realized that they've completely stolen his gimmick for this April Fool's joke. I have no idea. I need to message him about it, but I just thought this was hilarious and wanted to share it with you guys.
Dangers when you adventure.
Minecraft and D&D are teaming up to bring us an all-new adventure in the Forgotten Realms, and I, for one, think it looks absolutely stunning. I am a big fan of Minecraft. I also very much enjoy D&D, so seeing this collaboration between the two projects is really, really cool. And I think the actual gameplay and what you're doing fits perfectly. You are getting to travel through the Forgotten Realms, fighting classic D&D monsters, leveling up your character, and becoming a hero. Exactly what you should be doing in a classic D&D adventure. And honestly, this is really reminiscent for me of some of my earliest YouTube content. Chaos Cultist and I had this original series. We were playing some modded Minecraft, and basically the goal in it was to hunt a bunch of the mystical beasts that were added in through the mods, and we put all their trophies in a cabin that we had on the server, and it was a huge amount of fun. And seeing this adventure for D&D has reminded me of that immensely, so it's something that I think I might want to play on the channel once it is out. I'm hoping we'll get an actual announcement about the date when it's coming very, very soon, since we're officially in spring and it is 2023, so hopefully it's right around the corner. Speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, if you have ever wanted to learn to play the game, but maybe you don't have the time or energy to get a group of friends together to try it out, well, Wizards of the Coast is giving you an opportunity to do so through a web browser in a solo mode, in a sort of choose your own adventure, which they are calling Before the Storm. I think this is a really clever idea. It gives people an opportunity to get into the game at their own pace. Again, if they don't necessarily have the time or energy to meet up with friends, they can still try D&D out and see if it's something that they like. And then if they want to learn the game and they do enjoy it, and then they get together with some friends, this adventure leads into some of the Dungeons & Dragons starter sets really fluidly, and it's totally free. You can immediately start playing it. I've left a link to it in the video description below if you want to check it out and give it a try for yourself. Last but not least, I want to talk about a brand new Kickstarter coming to us from Cool Mini or Not for a brand new expansion for Zombicide. If you like Zombicide Black Plague or the Green Horde and you want to get back into that medieval setting, well, the next Kickstarter from Cool Mini or Not for Zombicide White Death is going to be right up your alley because it's set in that same medieval fantasy setting. And honestly, that's my favorite personally. I actually really like the look of this particular Zombicide. They seem like they're adding in a sort of siege element to it where you're going to be having to defend a castle or some sort of like battlement, which I really like the idea of. And it seems like they're combining some of the elements from, say, Zombicide Invaders and some of their other games all into this one game, and I just really liked some of the elements from that, so seeing it in this fantasy setting, which I enjoy more, just makes my heart very, very happy. There's also going to be a lot of new miniatures, which again, you know how I feel about plastic cracks, so I'll be very interested to see all the details about these brand new miniatures. The Kickstarter is going to go live starting April 5th, so if it's something that you're interested in, make sure to check it out. I've left a link in the video description below. All right, that has been it for this week in hobby news. There's a lot of big changes coming to Warhammer 40k, so definitely let me know your thoughts down below. Plus, we got some brand new news about Dungeons and Dragons, as well as Cool Mini or Not's latest Kickstarter. Plus, this Friday, I have a special treat for you guys because if you haven't noticed, we hit 40,000 subscribers on the channel. I have been waiting for this day, and what I'm going to be doing this Friday is having a Q&A where I'll be answering some of the questions you guys have been submitting to me, so I hope you are looking forward to that. Before I head out, I do want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for making it so content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we would not be doing this, so thank you very, very much. I have been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night.